Hello everyone, and welcome to the launch webinar on the Diagnostic Growth Tool, a tool developed by the University of Antwerp within the SPEED project to help assess the growth capability development of new and young high technology firms. The aim of this webinar is to present the Diagnostic Growth Tool and help you find out whether it could benefit your own company or those that you might coach. We will provide you with the basic information on how to use the tool and how to access it freely. To provide you with an overview of what this video will cover and help you structure your potential questions, we've provided you with a small agenda. We'll cover why the diagnostic tool was developed, what it is exactly and how it may specifically apply to you. You'll get a quick glimpse of how it works, how to use it, and what the tool provides you with that you can consistently refer back to. This webinar is followed by a Q&A session with the research team behind the tool, which will also go live on the 27th of May at 1:30 p.m. So why this tool? By talking to experts in startup development and growth, we've found that while there have been significant developments in helping entrepreneurs start firms, there remains a gap after that for those firms wanting and seeking to grow. Digging deeper into the major difficulties of growing as a tech-based company, 3 elements jumped out. First of all, sustainable growth in dynamic environments requires capability building. Capabilities can become the cornerstones of companies on which they can later develop and further extend their base on. But limitations of time and money constrain the development of all potential capabilities. So where to start? Aside from that, it is undeniable that in today's world, a company's human assets are the most critical resources for young tech-based firms. But so is diversity. This can cause conflicts and dilemmas in starter firms that are lacking knowledge on how to manage people. Optimizing a firm's potential demands attention to the human factors of the equation. Finally, a startup and a growing firm are notably different, and so is their primary focus. Yet it was striking to find that while many of the firms aimed to grow, most acted prematurely or lagged behind in their actions. Their timing was off because the knowledge on what their firms required at a specific point in time was lacking. The diagnostic tool aims to help firms that are struggling with these growth-related issues find their individualized answers. By infusing academic research and combining it with practical knowledge, the Diagnostic Toolkit helps you focus your efforts and investments as a firm, a coach, or an investor. By now, you're probably wondering how the tool will do all of that exactly. Well, it's simple. There are 4 steps that are part of the process. To begin with, the tool itself stimulates the person taking it to think about their company differently than they would usually do. In this way, the tool has been developed to start benefiting the participator right from the start. Secondly, the multi-level diagnosis that the tool provides is one of its key strengths. Based on academically validated scales, the diagnostic tool assesses not only firm level but also individual and team level aspects to account for a picture as close to a firm's dynamic reality as possible. As a third step, the person taking the assessment will immediately receive an individualized report, fully automated with their own scores and accompanied explanations. Interactive workshops present the 4th step, which will be exclusively available for the year 2021 and will consist of a deep dive into the details of each participating firm's individualized reports. This way, firms can compare to similar industry-wide companies and share their individual cases. But more on that at the end of the webinar. How does it work? The tool is based on 3 underlying principles that guide the set of questions and reported outcomes that each firm receives. First of all, in a dynamic environment, growth is not a linear checklist-based trajectory, but rather a dynamic and iterative process with ups and downs that can come back and haunt you again. In order to enable tackling growth, we therefore need to look at it from a challenges point of view. For that reason, this dynamic process can be described by 3 interrelated challenge dimensions. Each of these dimensions encompasses a larger set of challenges that firms can and will encounter throughout their growth process, albeit at different times or disguised as different opponents depending on the firm in question. Finally, at the beginning of the story, entrepreneurship is required for the firm to start up, while at a later stage it is crucial for innovation and continuous evolvement. It also presents a specific culture that is highly flexible and able to adapt quickly. Therefore, it is an asset that needs to be kept alive. Yet by definition, growth firms are more mature and require more management than do startups. They're larger, more complex, and less transparent, and therefore the entrepreneurship applied in their case requires a more strategic approach. let's look at what this means up close. When we say growth is dynamic rather than static, we imply that firms essentially grow by shifting between dynamic states. A dynamic state represents a combination of factors that represents the current reality of a company, namely the internal characteristics and resources of the firm itself, individual aspects of the manager or management team, and the environment in which a firm operates. If an internal or external event triggers a firm to change one or all of these factors, it essentially moves to another dynamic state. The second state may not necessarily be better than the first, but the intention of the firm to shift between states is sparked by a firm's determination to better position themselves as a reaction to this identified trigger. As you may imagine, a firm cannot always change as easily between states as it would like to. It will be confronted with specific difficulties that may challenge the company all at once or at separate points in time. The specific difficulties that accompany these shifts between dynamic states can be described by 3 dimensions: the entrepreneurial dimension, the orchestration dimension, and the legitimation dimension. Some challenges belong to the entrepreneurial dimension, relate to the identification of opportunities or threats both inside and outside of the company, their evaluation in terms of what they actually mean to the firm, and the actual decision of how to react to those identified opportunities or threats. The orchestration dimension covers difficulties that firms experience in actually putting their strategic decisions into practice. How do they implement new policies? How to get people on board with significant changes? And how to allocate their finances correctly, for instance. Finally, the legitimation dimension covers the widely acknowledged difficulties of legitimation, internal and external alignment, and integration between customers, employees, and external stakeholders. Tackling these challenge dimensions demands firms to build capabilities to enable their confrontation. How do we know what capabilities are critical, however? The third principle answers these questions for us. Strategic entrepreneurship simply inspires the adoption of an entrepreneurial approach to a strategic challenge of growth. It takes the key strengths of entrepreneurship, namely entrepreneurial culture, which increases transparency, flexibility, which stimulates fast adaptation, and continuous value creation and delivery, which supports customer retainment and innovation. And then it combines it with the key strengths of strategy, namely more efficient decision-making and allocation of resources, which increases not only short but also long-term effectiveness, learning and development, which enables the firm to build cornerstones to further extend upon, and advantage creation, which urges the firm to optimally use and build upon the skills and capabilities that are already available in the company itself. What this principle actually does is encourage entrepreneurs to not jump at the sight of the word strategy, but rather to grow towards understanding its value for their own firm's continued growth potential. Now that you know what principles a tool is built upon, you're all set to find out exactly how to use it. The Diagnostic Growth Tool works on a very simple basis. You, as a participator, log in, receive specific questions that have been developed based on all the information that you've just received, and then you get your answers by way of an individualized report. Yes, it is that simple. But wait, how do you know whether you're the right person to take the assessment? Well, the perfect profile exists of managers of growth-oriented young firms that operate in fast-changing environments and that have decision-making power. If this sounds like you, or someone just jumped to mind, you or they are probably who you're looking for to take the tool. The tool itself takes about 25 to 35 minutes to fill in, depending on your answers, and by the end of it, you'll receive your report. But maybe the most interesting question of all, what insights will you actually receive from this report? The final report will contain 2 large parts. One is a situation sketch, which can basically be understood as a multi-level profile of the company, and another is a capability diagnosis, which contains information on how the firm scores on the development of 3 firm-level capabilities that have been found to be critical to confront the challenges that we've just discussed. The situation sketch contains information on the growth aims of the company and the logics that dominate their strategic decision-making. Aside from that, the entrepreneurial self-efficacy and strategic leadership style of the manager who takes the assessment will also be explained, as well as their perception of the level of dynamism within their environment and how all of this combines with their other results. The firm's absorptive capacity, strategic flexibility, and innovation ambidexterity are the 3 capabilities that will be assessed on a diagnostic level. In short, absorptive capacity refers to the way in which firms can gather and internalize external knowledge into their own organization to use it for their own benefit. Strategic flexibility can then be assessed on a team and a firm level and will also be described this way in the report. Finally, innovation ambidexterity looks at the way in which firms go about innovating, on what approach dominates also in their companies. Firms get scores on all of these and receive an explanation on how their scores relate to one another as well as to the challenges of growth. Let's have a quick look at each of these aspects separately. A firm's absorptive capacity is built on 4 factors: acquisition, assimilation, transformation, and exploitation. Simply put, acquisition looks at the way the firm acquires knowledge from outside of the company. Think of this as actions that firms can take that allows them to gather knowledge that lies outside of their firm, such as regularly attending conferences in their industry, reading academic reports on their product's technology, or even meeting with external advisors, for example. Assimilation of this knowledge is necessary to share the knowledge to the larger group. Take the actions we've just described to collect information. When one person of a company engages in any such actions, they need to have a way to evaluate which particular information is relevant for their company specifically. And they also need a way to disseminate that exact knowledge to the larger group, so to speak. The manner in which firms do so efficiently refers to their assimilation capability. Transforming the same knowledge allows a firm to apply it to their own particular case and make this knowledge their own in a way. The way in which firms go about integrating new knowledge into their firm to retain it and revisit it and reuse it when necessary can be very different in 2 similar companies. The extent to which firms have clear notions on how this works reflect their transformation ability. Finally, the manner in which the firm exploits their collected knowledge refers to the actual results it achieves by commercially using the knowledge to their own benefit. Take, for instance, an adaptation of a technological feature of a product. For one company, using it as the base technology on which their entire product is built, this could be seen as a threat which requires immediate and radical actions. While for another firm, using complementary technology, it can mean a potential side project to further extend their own product. The way in which both firms go about capitalizing on this knowledge will be very different, but to both firms the information is relevant enough to require action. Strategic flexibility is rather self-explanatory, but you may ask yourself what the difference is at the level of the firm and the team. Well, a firm's strategic flexibility is based on how easily a firm can move resources and change internal structures when necessary. The current pandemic is an excellent example of a radical external trigger requiring many firms to change their approaches, revenue models, relational contracts, and sometimes even management. How fast and efficiently a firm is able to do so reflects its strategic flexibility. On the team level, strategic flexibility reflects the ease through which a company can shift their employees between tasks and jobs. Startups know like no other how the all-hands-on-deck approach works. Everyone is everything at all times, but specifically when you need them to be. Nevertheless, a growing firm requires this approach as well, but its implementation is somewhat more strategic in that it is targeted specifically towards confronting particular challenges of growth. As such, the level of strategic flexibility can be retained from a startup culture, but should also mature with the growing company to adopt a more strategic and focused approach in order to attract the right people to strengthen your team throughout growth. Last but not least, innovation ambidexterity is a difficult word to describe the way firms can simultaneously use exploitative and explorative approaches to innovate. It is very common for firms to use one approach more often or more prominently than the other, but both have specific advantages for tackling growth challenges in different ways and at distinctive times. Developing the ability as a company to use both approaches can be extremely beneficial in a highly dynamic environment, since both exploring new innovation opportunities or exploiting internally existing strengths of the company to innovate will be necessary at different times throughout the growth process. Since the situation sketch is rather intuitive, we'll briefly cover its contents and leave more information open for questions at the Q&A. The situation sketch provides a managerial profile of the participants taking the assessment. It explains what their human capital consists of, how confident they are in their ability to succeed as an entrepreneur, and what kind of leadership they tend towards. Aside from that, the situation sketch also uses knowledge that the firm already has, but makes an overview of this information for the reader because of its importance in combination with their capability results. Examples are perceived dynamism in the environment, firm age, firm growth, team size, also the company's growth readiness perception, its growth orientation, as well as the dominant logic underlying the company's strategic decision-making is registered and explained. If you've stuck with us up until now, thank you very much for your interest. With this, we've come to the end of the webinar and hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Since you've registered to this webinar and to the Q&A, you'll be the first to receive the link to the tool by way of an email right after the end of the Q&A session. This link will provide you access to go through the tool and even disseminate it through your network to whom you feel could benefit from it. On the 27th of May of this year, 2021, at 1:30 p.m., our Q&A session will go live. Please join the conversation to ask your questions, hear those from your peers, or just review what we've just discussed. At the Q&A session, the research team will be ready to answer your questions and guide the dissemination of the tool. If you're interested to join any of the 3 workshops we will be hosting in June and July on the dates mentioned, please do not hesitate to contact the research team, visit our website, or directly register via Eventbrite. The Diagnostic Growth Tool is part of the larger SPEED project, funded by Interact 2Cs and aimed at the development and advancement of a smart port entrepreneurial ecosystem. By stimulating development of both sides with this tool focused on the technology entrepreneurship side, it aims to further progress a collaborative ecosystem to bring together 2 worlds that could create value for the larger stakeholder network together, namely that of tech entrepreneurship and that of the port community. Thank you very much for joining us and hope to see you next time.